Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to ICE Pakistan, ICE Pakistan's interesting conversation. This Women's Day, it's going to be on empowering futures, advancing girls' education. I'm so delighted that we've spent today's Saturday working on the thematic for International Women's Day. Like you all know, this year is Give to Gain. And when we are giving, we also to talk about, what is it that the society holds as the values that we have, and what is it that are the real issues that we can speak about, advocate, and also deliberate some action areas for that. I'm so glad to be doing this webinar today because it's a topic that's really, really close to my heart. And I appreciate ICE Pakistan for giving me the opportunity to moderate this stellar panel that we have for you today, where we speak about how is the role of educational institutes, how is it changing? How are we moving towards making education not only affordable but accessible and also impactful? How are we developing the future leaders that the world needs? And specifically, when we're speaking about girls' education, this is the right time when people should be talking about it. And I'm so glad, and we'll have this 1 hour with you on the live stream that we have live on our LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook pages to have this conversation with three wonderful, stellar women who have seen and been a part of this culture. They've broken stereotypes in their own ways. They're representing different cultures, different backgrounds, different areas of work. But one thing is super, super common in each of their personalities and their professional journeys, and that is resilience and grit. With that, allow me to welcome our panel now with you so that we can learn more from them and hear from their experiences. So let me introduce first our very own, the Pro Vice Chancellor, External Collaborations at Buckinghamshire New University, Professor Sarah Williams. How are you, Professor Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you, Nora. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to be here this morning.
Wonderful. We're so glad that you took our time for this topic, which I know is very close to your heart. And you advocate a lot about women in education, women in the professional side, also speaking about girls in education. And let me introduce the other panels as well. So we can dive right into the conversation and I can get your perspectives on what the world is going through and how are we making a change towards that. So let me introduce our next speaker, who has a phenomenal decades of experience working for girl child education. She has been an advocate working on the initiative, which is her own, which is the Idare Taaleem e Nagahi. She's based in Pakistan. Baela Raza comes with a wealth of experience in this domain, not only advocating, ma'am, but also working and influencing policy making. Thank you so much, ma'am Baela, for being here today.
Lovely to be here
Thank you.
with such eminent people.
Oh, thank you so much, ma'am. And completing the channel, what happens when the girl child that we are talking about, when we empower that child with the right kind of education, with the right kind of setup, with the right kind of ecosystem where she is not asked before going to school. She doesn't have to ask anybody to go for higher education. She doesn't have to ask or look for that enabling environment. It's already there. I'm so happy to say that my mentor, who's taken me through this process as an alumni, as an inspiration, and then as a mentor, is here to focus on women empowerment via entrepreneurship. Now, Shahnaz Kapadia, to complete
Right.
our panel. She is the CEO of Mera, Maan, and also comes in with over 30 years, and more decades of experience working for women entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurship, and especially for the marginalized communities. Thank you so much, Ma'am Shahnaz, for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Wonderful, ladies. So here we have our panel, and I'm so excited because I think the time is going to run out, but we have an hour, and we'll set up our conversation based on that. So the reason why we picked up this topic, speaking about girl child education, was because I have myself also witnessed that we are here from very diverse countries. Baela and Shahnaz and myself from Pakistan, Sarah from the United Kingdom. However, the ethos remain very much where we are speaking about how do we encourage more women and more girls into education. We have some statistics from the World Bank, and every year the statistics look more and more dismal that million of girls are still out of school. But what is it that is essentially preventing these children, these girls specifically, to be out of mainstream education? So, Professor Sarah, because you are from the higher education, and I know that you have such a lot of advocacy that you do for girls in education. What are your thoughts that what are some of the barriers that the girl child is not really accessible, or the education opportunities are not really accessible to her?
I think it's important to say, first off, from a UK context, a lot of work has happened in this area over the last 40 or 50 years. And we really do see quite equal rates of access to education now in the United Kingdom. But that's really not the global picture. As you said, the statistics are really alarming. I think it's something like 122 million girls worldwide are out of the education system, which it should be a really sobering statistic for us. I think some of the key reasons, I think poverty is one of the key reasons for why girls are kept out of school. I think there are gender specific barriers. So there are things that affect girls disproportionately. We know there are some countries, without naming them, that don't allow girls to go to school and severely restrict girls' education access. We also know that there are some barriers to access of education for girls once they hit their early teens, so once they hit puberty, for instance, and that can in some cases be cultural, but it can also be practical. At that stage they have caring responsibilities and caring duties. And then there are other cultural issues such as early marriage, which we know is still a problem in some parts of the world, that also prevents girls from getting access to education. And once they've been prevented at sort of 12, 13 from accessing education, it's very, very difficult for them to get to university level.
Absolutely, and I'll post. This is a very good thing, and we'll get some learning points from the UK market as well. But let's move on to Ma'am Shahnaz, you, because you also look into and work a lot with this particular stakeholder group. So what do you think from a Pakistani perspective or a developing country perspective? Because I know that your work experiences outside of Pakistan as well and internationally as well. What are some of the factors in addition to what Dr. Sarah has mentioned? You're muted, ma'am. We need to unmute you.
So if I work in several fragile contexts, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan are very remote and very conservative areas, and there, other than social, there is also unfortunately distance. For example, in Balochistan, so structural issues are also something to be kept in mind. Distance to secondary schools is one of the reasons that there is a lot of dropout. Lack of female teachers, because again, that's a constraint, and also poor infrastructure. There just are no schools. So that is one area. And then Dr. Sarah already covered several aspects like early marriage, mobility restrictions, lack of transport. I mean, just how would they go
Yeah.
to school? They can't walk those long distances. In Balochistan, some of the areas are like 6 to 8 kilometers far, the schools. So, how would they get there? And safety concerns would be one another very important concern. But there's also perception barrier, in the sense that, okay, we'll send her to school. What will happen as a result? She might as well go to the farm, or be a farm labor and earn some money or contribute to the house. So those are, I think, some really, I work in the rural areas a lot, and those come up every time. It's not, but perception barriers is only one area. I mean, certain area, geographical areas may be more strong around perception barriers, but the other barriers are real as well. But
Absolutely,
Bela has
absolutely.
worked so extensively. I'm sure she will contribute a lot more to
Yeah,
this.
and I'm going to come down to Ma'am Baela as well, because you're absolutely right, Ma'am Shahnaz, and I'll echo that
Yeah,
in places which are very remote, very marginalized, we also see that, for a child to come to, let's say, a training or to come to the classroom, she also has to say the parent is coming, right? The brother is coming, the father is coming, but they have to see a female role model. And
exactly.
I have been in places in very remote areas of our country, and we have seen that, I've had to speak to the parent and to the brother and to the father that I'm going to be here and I
Yeah,
will be here till
that's
the
right.
very end,
That's
and your child is in safe hands. But that's the kind of responsibility. But, ma'am, Bela, coming down to you on the same point, there are some intrinsic and then there are some extrinsic barriers as well. And I know that there's been a lot of work that's been done to overcome specifically the barriers that are in some areas. But then I tend to think that we take a step forward and we take 10 steps backwards as well, right? So in your experience, what are some of the areas where a lot has been done to like overcome these barriers?
I think, I'm really underscoring what has been said by both Professor Sarah and by Shanaz. And I just do want to highlight one thing which has become a very big issue, and it should always be on our, in front of us all the time, and that is the big climate change crisis and how disproportionately it affects girls and women, and especially when they're in fragile contexts. We have now 44.4% poverty in our country, which means that there is a huge population which is in a very vulnerable condition. And therefore, whenever it comes to sacrifices, it's always the girls who end up being the pyramids of sacrifice. They are the ones, even we've seen in our research on Asar, the work we do on in every district of the country, that when it comes to even the poorest households, there's a huge inter wealth discrimination against girls. But this climate change crisis means it comes with migration, comes with displacements. Sometimes displacements are temporary and sometimes they can be forever. So all of these things pile up. But you know what? On a very positive note, the past, I think, 5, 6 years since COVID, we've been agitating a lot, even in complex times. And in those complex times, which I call the COVID dividends, that we suddenly, the digital space opened up. It was all right for girls to be sharing. They didn't have their own Androids or phones, but they were sharing. It was okay in the family to share. Never mind, even if they got time at 10:30 at night. But Shanaz would bear me out that girls were sharing and they were like accelerating and galloping with all opportunities to be able to have their voices heard over, the on social media, to be able to say things that they would have never said. They had an opportunity to have a voice during that period. But I also want to say that the government itself finally realized that this is not an issue of conspiracies that we talk about. People like myself, we've gotten evidence, a huge nationwide survey which says this is what's happening, this is what access looks like, this is what quality looks like. Girls are falling behind, do something. And then their own surveys are getting better, the administrative surveys of the government. But we are in the midst of, surprisingly, a huge reform environment, whether it is programs coming or initiatives being taken place. I think even having a chief minister as a female helps, when she insists that, transport will be sensitive to gender issues, or where they will have more stipends, like, our biggest social protection program for education, which is a conditional cash transfer, pays more for girls right from primary all the way to higher secondary than it does for boys. All of this is beginning to make, in spite of child marriages, in spite of all those challenges, we're beginning to see the gaps becoming narrower between girls and boys in some areas. And we've been seeing that the learning levels of girls are higher than boys in some districts, especially during COVID. this phenomena came up that the boys actually were being left behind, and the girls were far ahead in two of the four provinces of the country. And the reason was not a happy one. The reason was that perhaps the boys were going for more child labor. But in the work that we all do, and I think increasingly being recognized, people like Shahnaz and myself are veterans at saying that, with learning, earning should be there. And Shahnaz has been a pioneer in some of that area. But I was also introduced to that way back in 92, 93, with a small group in villages with the local government to see how can we find young women, adolescent girls, whom we could do accelerated learning, and we could do also livelihoods with skills. Now, finally, the government is also, I mean, my God, does it take 35 years or 33 years for finally the penny to drop? That's our people like us worry. Why didn't this happen when we could show evidence and results? Why do we have to still take two steps forward and then three steps back? I wouldn't say 10, but still. So it's like, some of us say, this we knew all along. We did it. But never mind, it's coming now. And I think that the demand side is becoming very aggressive,
Yeah.
and they are using the informal sector, and they are even leaving aside government, and sometime they say we will do our own low cost solutions, but we want learning, we want science, we want enterprise, we want to be heard. And I see people from remote areas of Huzdar, from Mitti, Tharparkar, to remote areas of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I just feel more power to them. And thank God we are still up on our feet. We are fossils, but we are on our feet. I might be 70, but I feel like seven. That's, and it's okay. It's only a number. Age is a number, but thank God we're all there to become enablers. That's the magic word. How do we become enablers through this movement where girls are clearly moving fast and grabbing every opportunity of technology, of social media, of voice and agency?
Thank you so much, ma'am Bella. I think this is phenomenal. I think a lot of correlation that I see being in the UK and also looking at the work that's been done here, specifically on the higher education side. Because let's talk about this now, because we've spoken a lot about girls in primary education, girls in secondary education, and now we talk about girls in higher education. So, Professor Sarah, I'm going to come to you, and we're going to build up the narrative. We see quite a similar a situation, if it's not that vocal, but a similar situation when we see a greater dropout from, let's say, the GCSEs to the sixth form, right? Fewer people doing their A levels. And I know, Professor Sarah, that you were having this conversation the other day, that how important is an A level, and then even if those who are not doing, how are we allowing the access to quality education? And I know that in the UK it's a very regulated higher education environment where we have to
Yes.
speak about access, participation, right? So, Professor Sarah, I'm going to pose this question to you. When we see that fallout, right? And personally, I also see this fallout, and the pie chart is sporadically the same. You'd have more girls in the primary, lesser in the secondary, very fewer trickle down through to the higher education space, right? It's not in the same proportion. What is that you feel is being done, and what are some of the success areas where you have personally seen that growth and you have worked on in terms to ensure that more and more there is the ratio of the girls making it through the sixth form, through the colleges, to higher education, that cycle is increasing?
I think absolutely it is. It's certainly in the United Kingdom. So if I go back over, I've been in higher education for 25 years now. If I go back to when I first started, I very much see almost actually the scales tipping the other way. So we do, if we're talking about progression from A level into university, there is sometimes a higher proportion of young women coming into university than there are young men. So almost we've gone a little bit too far the other way, and we need to kind of find that balance point. But I think there is still an issue of access if we're talking about older women. So we're talking about, women my age or perhaps 35 and up who didn't have that access to education. So what can we do now that encourages them to come back? Because university is it's not like primary school and secondary school where you go through in an age-related capacity. You can go to university at any time. So, what are we doing to make sure that university remains accessible to them, and to anybody who didn't access it at 18? But I think that's where your point about, A-level discrepancy is really important. And how do we ensure access to higher education for people who maybe didn't have A-levels? And there is a bit of a debate in the United Kingdom at the moment around whether student loans, one Vice Chancellor has come out and said that student loans should only be available for those who had A-levels. I fundamentally disagree. I think access to higher education should be for anybody that wants to learn. And it's incumbent on us as educators to make that experience accessible and relatable and something they can succeed in. So access is one part of the picture. It's not the end of the story. If somebody doesn't succeed as a result of their access to university, then access gave them nothing. So it's about what we do when we've got them in our communities and how we support those women, because actually they often come with challenging situations and challenging lives. When you're returning to university as an adult, you've usually got parents you're caring for, children you're caring for, jobs that you're trying to do, you're juggling. I mean, you can talk to any woman in the world and they will understand what you mean when you talk about juggling life and other commitments. We're all doing it all the time, running households, looking after children, looking after parents, extended duties, as well as our work. So this plays into their lives as they come into education, and we have to bear that in mind. They're not as likely to be free as a bird and able to commit to everything. We've got to think, okay, how do we structure their learning in a way that enables them to access it? So that might mean compressed timetables, for instance. It might mean digital, as Baela was talking about there, the access to the digital space that enables them to learn and study outside of a traditional building, university, campus context. So we need to think about their lived experience and their lives and adapt ourselves to their needs and not the other way around. And I think higher education has for many years been predicated on this idea that the student bend themselves to us, that they have to change to adapt to our way of doing things. And if we want accessible education for girls and women the world over, we need to understand what they need and provide that for them.
Wonderful. And I think Professor Zara, the biggest proof point in that is that when we also see and we go through classroom to classroom, you see a lot of girls, right, where you and I
Yeah.
are at, and we see all age brackets. So let's say an 18-year-old sitting with a 50-year-old and showing her how to do peer learning and showing her how to use the phone right. So if there's a digital access, if they have to access their teaching materials, if they have to seek support from each other, there is actually, the age is not only, it's not a topic of discussion. They're all just there to learn. And from there, I want to build up a perspective. Now, we also talk about a lot about graduate outcomes, and this is how we benchmark a lot of the work that institutions are doing, right? At the enterprise level, at the higher education level specifically, when we say that we've given you a certificate, when we have given you a qualification, when we have given you a diploma, you have to go and fetch for yourself. And the biggest fetching in that benchmark, and that ideal job role is identified with, all right, how many good six-figure salary are you going to make? But then what about the financial empowerment bit? I'll tell you, and I'll just, something has come up in my head a couple of years ago. We sat down at ICE and we said, all of the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? We asked them that question. And we had a bunch of 60, 70 students. And they all said, okay, I want to land a job in a telecommunication. I want to go in there. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a professor. I want to pursue my PhD. And in that room, Ma'am Shahnaz, there were two who raised their hands and were brave enough to say, I want to set up my own business. I want to set up my own enterprise. And that is what we needed to actually capitalize on. And we said, so how do we do that? So we started off with this initiative of, why don't you learn to earn? And why do you have to, be a job seeker? Why can't you be a job creator? So you have done a lot of work, Ma'am Shahnaz, and I've been a witness to it. What you see in her background, by the way, is her office space and also her house, which is where all the training takes place of women from all across all marginalized groups, all age brackets, learning how to set up their own businesses. So these micro enterprises, Ma'am Shanaz, how have you seen in reality of women changing their whole lives 180 degrees and just going into that positive stream and making it work for themselves?
So, Bela is witness to some of our work. We did it with her. And frankly, it is about showing the vision, showing the pathway. I think we need to create those pathways, but they're not automatic. So when a girl is given education, like traditional education, that doesn't automatically mean that she'll up and run and get a job. So we experimented back in 90s, I think early 90s, uh, with schools. Prior to that, I used to work with women, but that was, I think, the first time that we worked with girls, young girls, and the just to kind of show them the dream. And this, of course, you use different methodologies to do that. But when they understand that this is something I can do, I think that can do, so first is the will and the interest to be doing it, and then secondly, to show them how it can be done, and third, it was the technology. So back in early 20s, we'd already started, social media was already kind of kind of, it had entered the arena, and that changed everything. So girls did not no longer had to go to they didn't have to physically, because that was the one of the major constraint, mobility. But once that constraint was removed, it was much easier for them to move forward. Another very important uh, problem that I have seen, particularly in the rural areas, less in the urban, is they can't do it alone. The cost will not allow them, so they must do it in small groups. So common interest group or working together is really important. Some of our area, in Pakistan, textiles, creative arts is one of the big area, and there was a question there too. So yes, when platforms are formed in the rural areas, and when women and girls are given the training to be able to do it together, they've been able to do it. So what I would think is that, if you can show them the pathway, they will they will find the way. If you can show them the pathway and tell them the basics of how it is done, they'll do it. If it is viable, if it is feasible. So, one of the things that we do is, when we go into an area, we identify what is possible, what is feasible, and around that, then we build the mindset. Once the mindset is there, they're able to do it. So, I don't know if that answers anything, but
It does, absolutely. No. And
the
I think the mindset, ma'am Shanaz, that you're talking about, that's exactly what we see then replicated. Because I remember you telling them, can you set up a small French fry stall? Right.
yeah.
And that's how we start off with. That's how little we start off with. But we were doing another webinar with our BNU alumni the other day. And one of them is a biotechnologist in the US. And she's like, I'm helping save lives out of a personal, a personal tragedy that you went through. And she said, that is something that has made me so resilient. And everything that I learned in the university, which was to set up a business, I'm actually practically doing it, but it's all empathy driven. And another story was a similar thing that another alumni shared that, I come work in the healthcare industry in the STEM department as a woman, and when I'm in a room, I'm the only one in most rooms, right? So that is the kind of, I think, what education is essentially doing more so than ever, is providing these people the faith in themselves, I would say, that they can do bigger things. Isn't that right, Ma'am Bella? And I'm going to come around to you as well now. And Professor Sarah, I think you've also created a lot of inspiration on that as well. That sometimes you just have to be the torchbearer, and you have to say, all right, if I can strike off norms, because there are not many vice chancellors, even in the UK, who are women, right? Who are leading from the front. So it is the task, and the uphill task is a little bit more harder, I would say, for women to actually voice um, their perspectives, do it in a way in which they don't sound bossy, do it in a way in which they're impactful, do it in a way in which they are taken seriously enough to have that vision in front of them, and then say to whoever they have to the board, to the top management, to the leadership, to the policymakers, to the government officials, that this is where we're heading. Are you coming with me? So, Ma'am Bella, let's talk about that now. For you, because you've been running the institution for so long, and it's all around awareness, it's all around impact. So let's talk about this, that how have we seen that trend, specifically in Punjab, which is like the largest province per se as per population, and then your work throughout the country. How has that impacted? Are we seeing now better flow? I do see that there's some positivity in terms of more women universities popping into the country, but like your perspective on this.
Um, uh, I think just building on this conversation, as you know, Pakistan is notorious for the fact that for every, at least in medicine, if they were girls were given an opportunity, uh, girls would be at least 70% girls in medical colleges versus boys, because once they cross the barrier of grade 8 and 10, there is no stopping girls. And so, even at the higher education level, girls, the gender parity is quite close. We've seen as we move up from primary upwards, the gender parity becomes quite equal. But that doesn't mean that there's still that discrimination is not there for women. That they're always accused of the fact that what's the point of investing in girls' higher education when they're going to get married and raise children? They don't realize that nature has always made girls and women into incredibly productive people. They operate at multi layers. They have their productive, reproductive, and social roles and economic roles. There's no stopping them. And even in every programs that I have done, I take the example of a program that we actually, it was very eclectic. We put together called Siani Seheliyan, which means wise friends. We literally took girls who had dropped out in grade 10, 9, 7, 8, whatever, and made them not only complete those the matriculation, etc., but also provided, and this is the key, whether it is higher education or whether it is secondary education or even technical vocational, the life skills segment is really lies at the heart of it. All of us over here who are, we are talking to each other, we've seen that what is it that makes that switch come on is those set of life skills that we have put together. Whenever we started engaging with young women and older adolescent girls, is that we started to talk about their sense of autonomy, their sense of voice, their sense of being able to express themselves. I mean, I even got them to do their own videography with a very famous lady, Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, with SOC Films, how to take their short films and issues so they could talk about it. That sort of addressing issues of social emotional learning and life skills allowed them space to become very successful, not just in academics. They wanted to do skilling and certified skilling, And many of them who are now in their master's position, and there are many like that. There were 10,000 who were put through a certified technical vocational with digital skills and marketing, etc. But many of them are running their enterprises in the evening. They have their Facebook pages, running their bridals, this, that, their other. We had them on the supply chain of Unilever, so they became beauticians and they were selling their beauty products over there. You know, women have, in our part or in anywhere in the world. I mean, I worked in 3 continents, and I've seen everywhere, wherever they are vulnerable, and you provide those enablers or enabling environment, they break every glass ceiling, and they nothing stops them. I don't know where they find the time. It's like us. I sleep only 4 hours a day, and I think many of us do. And we're stretching, and I can sleep on anything that moves because I'm always running a sleep deficit. But the point is, the girls are exactly that. And I see even where the mother-in-laws of even married girls who are still continuing with education and doing enterprise, that they're also supporting them. So the bad mother-in-law has now become the good friend who is, minding the babies because they know how productive these young women are. Now, I'm not saying we have millions like that, but we perhaps we have many more like that. And so higher education, the question also is on higher education. Some of us who worked with ministers, been advisors, we still have those big challenges. What is an enabling environment in university, on the boards, on anywhere for women? Because men don't think about those issues for us.
Yeah.
We have to say, where are the toilets? Are the toilets accessible? Are they clean? Are they sufficient? I mean, from simple things like this to saying, where is the space for us to speak? How do we influence policy? How do we work in issues of innovative financing, etc.? There's still a kind of, even amongst the most educated men, they're still very, what should I say, blinkered when it comes to what women can do and are doing, even in Pakistan, from being scientists to being skiers to being footballers to being climbing Everest and to being, everything. And now the number of motorbike schemes, and Shahnaz will bear me out, the one number of motorbike schemes that are now being open to women everywhere, even in places where they said the feudal mindset will not allow, or, but they're being done so that women can go to higher education, not have this challenge of distance, not have problems of transport, but can be mobile. And it's all right in Pakistan. And we're seeing more and more women now in non-traditional roles or non-traditional modes of transport that were earlier never to be invisible, but now we are beginning to see that more and more. So, but I just want to end this segment by saying that, even though we pass rules and laws that every board, commercial organization, and every board will have X% of women, but if they can get away with it, they never have women. So we still have to work very hard to ensure that women find their place in those decision making roles, on the boards, in the corporate sector, in government, in whatever. So, still being in those decision making roles as leaders with strong ways of being able to address those issues, even though our social protection programs, which are one of the finest in many countries, women are actually the head of household is considered as woman, and all social protection instruments have to be passed through the women. So rather than the head of households as men, most of the social protection schemes, whether conditional cash transfers or unconditional, come to the mothers or the wives or women by and large. These are good things to build on. How do we use those opportunities to really create more breakthroughs for higher education, for technical vocational, for everything?
Yeah.
Because women have to find that economic ground to be able to have more choices.
Absolutely, ma'am. Bella. Very, very well said. I think in terms of what we are saying, that who is going to pull up that chair for us in that boardroom, right? And this has been. I think it just requires a lot of concerted effort. It's not going to be one person who's going to be the cheerleader. I think what is slowly happening is that if I speak and if I look at the three of you, so inspirational, and I would be a few decades behind, but I have somebody to look up to. And I think conversations like this, um, it not only inspire, I think they give you the courage and they give you the kind of reassurance. We were having this conversation the other day at another panel, that do we tend to overthink as women? And then we all said yes unanimously. But then we thought that that is maybe perhaps the positive and the pro that we have for women, that we can actually look at a picture from five different angles and say, maybe, okay, I need to be empathetic, I need to be authoritative here, I need to be rational, I need to look at the financial impact it's going to have, and then I need to look at the overall community impact, that whatever my decision in a leadership role is, I would be able to look at those angles and then reflect on it. Professor Sarah, I'm going to come to you. There are lots and lots of questions that are coming in. Thank you so much to all of our attendees who are watching us live. I will come to the questions. Don't worry. Keep sending them in. I'm starting the ones that we want to ask our panel. But I want to open this up to a little personal conversation, right? Because I know all three of you would have had your struggles when you would have made that move, when you would have made that first, let's say, Professor Sarah, when you were trying out for a role and you would be like, am I the best person for this, right? Or it could be anything where you found that kind of a mentoring from someone. What was it that actually steered you towards that? And because I think it's going to be really inspirational for everybody who's watching us, men and women both. But to have that kind of a conversation, that if you can do it, then maybe somebody else can too. So can you share a personal a time where you felt that, am I the right person for it? And how did you overcome that whole brain obstacle? Did you seek mentoring, or did you just say, all right, Sarah, you have to just power through, and you did it?
I would say actually it was probably my first academic management role. So I'd been in academia since 2004. So but I didn't have my first management role until 2016. So I'd been teaching for 12 years and happily teaching for 12 years. I will also say I had small children at the time, and therefore I was perfectly happy teaching because I wanted to be a mother, and I wanted to be very hands-on with my children. But there came a point where there was a role, management role going, and I honestly went back and forth for a very long time about whether I should go for it. Surely there would be much better candidates than me. It's probably not for me. And I had actually decided probably not for me. I won't go for it. And it was a man that talked me round. He won't be watching this, so this is absolutely fine. But there was a man that I worked with alongside at Wolverhampton University at the time, called Steve Grady, and he was an associate dean. And he took me to one side and said, I just think you would be really good at this, and I really think that you should consider going for it. Um, and that was the thing that changed my mind, because suddenly I saw myself in somebody else's eyes, reflected through somebody else's lens, to say, oh, okay, well, if they think that I can do it, then maybe I can do it. And maybe all my self-doubt that's been going around in my mind is just me playing tricks on me. And I listened and got the job. And then kind of got a new management job every couple of years from that role on, as my confidence grew in the various roles. And I think that's worth highlighting, is that we've done so much on our own as women, but if we really want to break that glass ceiling, if we really want to have a seat at the table, you asked earlier, who's going to pull out that seat for us? it's men. We need male allies. We need really strong male allies who understand actually the value of having a breadth of experience at the table and being able to hear a variety of different viewpoints and lived experiences. And so that was crucial to my own journey. That first step would not have been taken if it hadn't been for a conversation with a colleague. So that was something that I think, as I said, it helped me to get out of my own head. You said earlier, women know we think things, and we do. And having that external perspective helped me to see that there was something more than I was saying. I would have just talked myself out of it. I would have just gone around in circles and said, oh, well, I can't do this because I've got the children, I've got this, I've got that going on. I can't possibly. And I needed somebody almost to kind of give me a metaphorical shake. And I said, no, come on, you can do this. So yeah, I think that matters. It matters to take soundings from other people.
And Dr. Sarah, I'm sure it still goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, it's a constant curve. But one more question, and then I'll go on to Shahnaz and Baela on this as well. So how do you overcome this now? So now, when the kids are grown up, right,
They
and
are grown up now.
and the designation has gone up as well. Do things get better?
Do they get better? I really genuinely think that's contextual. So, my honest answer to that for me is yes, because I work within an organization that's very inclusive, that's very focused on lived experience and making sure that all voices are heard. And for me, that's very important. I don't think every context is the same. Certainly not every university is the same. Not every organisation is the same. I'm very fortunate, and I don't ever take that for granted. I know that I work with a really dedicated group of people, all of whom are committed to ensuring that everybody has the opportunity to fulfil their potential, no matter who they are or what their circumstances. So I'm very fortunate that, for me at least, in my current university, that barrier is no longer present, but it is still the case in many other workplaces. And I have friends working in environments where that they know that they know better than the people leading them, but they know they'll never get the chance to show it. So I am forever grateful, and do really not take it for granted. I am aware of how lucky I am.
Oh, wonderful. That's really, really positive to hear. I'll come to Shahnaz now. Shahnaz, I know a lot on that. I know the story, but I'll let you share like an instance from your own personal experience where you had to fight this battle.
Um, Noor, uh, I grew up with my brother, and I grew up in a different country. I grew up in Bangladesh. The culture was different. I went cricket, I used to play cricket. I used to play with the boys. I used to go swimming in the river. So it was completely different. So I grew up in a different context, but then we shifted to Pakistan. Karachi and Pakistan. And therefore, the culture was different. It was far more restrictive, conservative, and but for me, what was really important, and like Sarah said, that you need somebody to show you that you can do it. And for me, it was my dad. So my father was always there, and he would say, "Oh, try it. What will happen? Try it." I remember back in '70s, I wanted to drive a motorcycle, and I obtained a license. I actually went, gave a test, and got a license. And back in the '70s, it was unheard of. But my father said, "Go ahead, do it." So I think that I grew up with that. And then when my first job was at IBA, and there again I had the dean and director who was right at the back and said, "Go ahead, do it." So that was great. But then I came and I had battles with other men, and I was also called man of a woman, but not in a positive and a appreciative way. It was certainly meant to be derogatory. I've been called that as well because I had a slightly more abrasive personality when I was younger. And but then I thought that, maybe that is needed to be able to do what I want to do. And that is me. But that doesn't mean that it'll hold for everybody. But now when I program in the rural areas, I always go through men. They are the doorkeepers, they are the guard, and we will need them to support. And lo and behold, we have, even in certain programs, we give awards to local men who have been proactive and who have supported women. And I think that those are important little gestures, because it gives the message that no, this is the good behavior. So I think,
Mm.
there have been many, many ups and downs. I don't even want to mention them. There are men who are jealous, you know, just as women are jealous, men could be, of your progress. But, it all comes as part of the deal. So when I do my capacity building programs, I help the women understand that this is what you need to do. If they have to go to the market, I send them to the market, not in a protective way. I tell them, take the bus, go to the market, because that is what they'll eventually have to do.
Yeah.
And that is what we need to help women understand, that they can do it. And I think that is a very important thing. We do it, or their men do it, brothers do it, or fathers do it. Somebody will have to help them, overcome that barrier. And I think it is very possible. We've done it with hundreds of thousands, and I've seen the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting from,
Time is up,
like,
so I'm going to stop here.
yeah, no, no, no. We're good. We're good on time. If we all you ladies are okay, we can stretch a little bit as well, because I think
Okay.
there's lots and lots of questions. I haven't even gotten round to it,
Yeah.
but I will slowly. But what you were saying, ma'am Shahnaz, how we call it in Urdu as shaur, or in English as awareness,
Yeah.
right? And that awareness also in terms of um, having that concept of, following somebody and getting self mentoring as well. I think that is also very
Yeah.
important.
So
Observational
you
learning. Ji.
Yeah. So in all our enterprise training, be it for micro, be it at any other level, there is a concept of entrepreneurial competencies. These are 13 competencies, and we help these women, as you said, show or consciousness. I think it's really important, particularly for women. We work with men as well, but particularly for women, it is really important for them to discover that these competencies do exist within them. Some may be strong, some may be weak, but they need to build these competencies in order to be able to survive, be it in a job, be it in an enterprise. And this program that we have designed, I've taken from many, many other countries. I've been inspired by them, but it works like magic. So that, I believe, is really important for them to be self-aware and understand that each of these competencies, they have to develop and they have to play out uh, within the house, within the community, and at the more external market level. And I think I've now, of course, trained so many master trainers and trainers, so it's all out there in Pakistan, at least. Um, yeah.
I've been one of them,
Being
and I'm
one of
so proud that whatever I've learned, it has gotten that consciousness in me, ma'am Shanaz, and you're truly a story of resilience. All three of you are. But those of you who are watching us live, if you want to know more about any of the women, I'll give you a little sneak peek before I can come to Ma'am Bella for her personal experience. If you want to look into what Professor Sarah Williams speaks about, you should go on her LinkedIn and you should read the kind of blogs that she writes. They're truly inspirational. They give you a perspective as well. Just today's one is on quality, looking at ways on how new restrictions are always going to be there and how do we have to pivot ourselves. If you want to look up Ma'am Shanaz, you will have to go to her live WeCast online interview. It's in 1 hour one. You will have some tears rolling down your eyes as well, and then a bright smile on your face as well. If you want to look at Ma'am Bella's breadth of work that she has done, oh my, gosh, amongst these all of these rural areas that we're speaking about, we were speaking about Siani Sahelis. The experience is wonderful. How can adolescent girls help each other out? If they're gossiping and talking about other things, they can also gossip and talk about education as well, and how digital skills are important. So, Ma'am Bella, one experience, personal one, where you felt, oh my God, will I even be able to get out of bed today?
Um, I think I was very fortunate. One, I think birth order matters. I was second born, and I thought I always had to struggle to be heard, and so on. So I think I was just born with those genes, and so very early in my life, I started to be very assertive. And my grandmother was so worried about me that she said, "You are so unlike anyone in the family for the kind of assertiveness that you show." And she used the word the way I say it, it'll convey very well what she meant. She said, "You are a harrafa," which means that you get into fights to be able to get your rights on just about anything. So my training started very early, and I realized that men were very contradictory. My father was a bully, but at the same time, he was a liberator as well. He's the one who allowed me to go for a board in education in England at age 15 in 1971. Now, in Pakistan, it was unheard of that girls would be sent away from their homes when they were 15-year-olds. But more than that, I was trying to also very consciously get rid of what molds people wanted me to be stuck in. That, I should have all those skills, so I become a good wife, I get married well. I said, what rubbish. I need to move faster. By the time I got to my husband, my intention was to marry when I did get married, and I had a milestone because I'd been too independent. But when I interviewed my husband, I was interviewing him, and I told him, if you do not do this, I do not want to come in your life. And he was so shocked, and he made some promises, and to this day he has never broken. For example, if you ever take accounts from me, I will be gone. And he said, what does that mean? I said, it means I'll be gone. And he's, for fear of that, he's never. So sometimes you have to draw your lines, and it's important because we are surrounded by bullies, you know and I think I much as I think men have been enablers. As I said, my father was a great enabler, my husband is a brilliant enabler, but there are times when one has seen things where a local counselor in Lahore, when I started my work, one day near the red light area where a lot of prostitutes are, we were opening schools and supporting them because they were not being supported. And this man, everything would take place in those schools except for education. I mean, they use the schools for this is in the walled city of Lahore where you don't have many spaces. So they felt their right was to have schools for weddings, for deaths, for this, for that. And there was no time for learning. And one day, and I said, this is not possible. We got the government to write a notification that schools will be used for schooling and learning only, and not for these kind of things. So when he saw that notification, he tore it and he came to me. He said, Ma'am Baela, I really want to shoot you. And he took out a gun in front of me and he said, I will shoot you because you are asking us to change our ways of how we use our community spaces, including schools. And I looked at him. I don't know what I said to him, but I was angry, I think, and I went back. But I had to eat my humble pie. And I told the team, and I said, listen, you know, I have a, we have a mission which is much bigger than him. And the question is, how do you face such bullies when they come? I am going to write him a letter of apology that I shouldn't have been that aggressive with him, but however, the schools must belong. And actually wrote a letter of apology to him in a very subtle way. But he became the best of my friends and then allowed me to ensure that the schools were going to be used as schools. So I've not had worries inside, but outside also, when people like that came, or when I served in the ministry, for 4 years as technical advisors, someone got after me, and I had 17 anonymous letters which went to the secretary every time, and long letters to say why they should get rid of me. And one day I went to the secretary. I said, "It's so embarrassing. I'm made of thick skin. My father's been to prison as a political person of conscience so many times. But, I feel it's embarrassing for you to receive these letters." And he turned around and said to me, "Bambela, listen, when I feel I'm going to be bothered, and when this person decides to be not so anonymous as he is, I will ask you what has to be asked. But right now, you're not concerned." I think that fear, I think having lived in so many parts of the world, being understanding of that there is a universalism amongst all of us. We know what are the issues and how do you overcome. Your fear goes away. That ability, that your fear goes away, that you are being able to be so honest and strong, I think just in that sense makes you so liberated. And I'm so happy, like I'm sure Sarah is and Shahnaz is. We are really liberated, free people. For us, nothing is embarrassing, I think. And we get a lot of support. Look at all of you. Look at so many generations. Look at my mother-in-law. Look at everyone who's supported me. And whilst I am aggressive, I can be angry. We ring fence ourselves to say these are the boundaries. I will never cross those boundaries. So I have never fought with my in-laws ever, ever, or with my daughters-in-law, or with others. But the only person I fight with is my husband. Okay, and that's my, and so we decide to find a space where we can have outlets, but we must be able to regenerate. Mercifully, all of us have had those great spaces to be able to regenerate and keep recharging ourselves for even bigger battles. And so the bigger battles are important. The smaller battles, don't waste your time on. Don't be stressed out with smaller battles. But the bigger battles, we never lose ground on that. Those are the magic aspects which have, I think, charged each one of us. I'm sure you as well, Noor, in many ways. That's how we enjoy life. That's how we are happy. Even there is a war going on, we are looking, and even though those 168 girls were shot at, I mean, how angry it makes all of us. But the question is, inside, there must be ways of being happy that charge you, that make you go through these crises. Look at Shahnaz. I mean, you can't even imagine the kind of crisis that we go through. And yet we are able to smile, and yet we are able to be on top of things. We give our best. We give our best. And I think that's what, makes us feel that okay, we can go the next step and the next mile and the next 100 miles, the next million miles. We will do that till we find that the last child can learn, the last girl can feel that she can be empowered, and that's what makes a life worth living.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that is so true, and I was seeing Sarah and Shanaz as well, and we're all nodding our heads because I think we'll all agree that there have been times when there have been nobody around us, and we've been our biggest cheerleaders, and I think that holds true for a lot of women who. Like I said in the beginning, that we have to fight these stereotypes. Every battle that we've fought, the path to success that looks a little bit more tedious for women, like you're mentioning, Mambella, for some, I think would crush under the pressure. And they wouldn't have that kind of ecosystem around them. And like you're saying, that for each one of you and each one of the stories that you have shared, you have also been very, very fortunate to find that kind of ecosystem spaces where people have said, go ahead, Bella, go ahead, Shanaz, go ahead, Sarah, go ahead, Noor. And we're right behind you and supporting you with conversations that really, really I think, help in shaping the next generations. I think for Sarah, for your daughters would be following through, they'll be looking up to you. Granddaughters, Ma'am Baela, who are following you. I know Ma'am Shahnaz has a grandson as well. I have a 12-year-old.
I just turned 18 today.
Wonderful. There we go.
She's on
There,
top of the world.
there we go. And all of these young generation who are looking, whether they're men, whether they are girls, they would be the ones who are also creating more of these inclusive spaces without them knowing, even because they're just observing us. They're observing mom coming back from work, putting her bag down, rushing to the kitchen, getting food on the table, doing the school runs, doing the PTAs. There's a sports day here, there's a sick medication, you have to go to the GP, you have to take care of the maid, the bills, all of the responsibilities that accumulate, which are across cultures, they're pretty much predominantly the same. But what really happens is that we tend to prioritize, I think, the careers along with everything else that's coming up. Ma'am Shanaz lives in a real, it's a really nice town. It's a little bit off from the city, and it's a huge place. And she just loves being by the side of the river, where her house is. And I also, when I used to go there, I used to ask her, how is she going to make this work here, right? Who's going to come in here? And then people come in, because that environment is there, because that enabling environment is there. They can bring in their little babies, have their babysitters there in her office space. There is a no judgment zone. My daughter has been there as well. So these kind of teeny initiatives, I think, really, really enable when women are in those leadership position, to enable it for everybody else that's following through. Let's take a little bit, a few more questions. We can extend our session by 10 minutes if you allow me. But what I'm seeing coming in from the panel is there's a lot of conversation, women in unconventional non-women roles, right? So we're speaking about technology, we're speaking about artificial intelligence, we're speaking about um, anything that has to do with science, anything that has to do with creative education. There's a question here. Somebody is asking us, Sabi is asking us that, how do we see the scope of women who are in creative education, in fashion, in textiles? So let me pose this as a question, Professor Sarah, to you, because higher education, you're picking up a discipline, um, an education, a qualification that's going to hopefully stay with you and be your profession going forward. How do you think the university, in your own capacity, are we encouraging greater inclusion? Is there a career that is just more male focused, or how are we creating that enabling environment where women are also welcome to apply for these non-conventional, non-female roles?
I think universities have done a fantastic job in the UK over the last 20 years, to encourage women to apply for pretty much any course that they want to do. The issue that we have is the pipeline. Are they being encouraged to take the right A levels or the right BTECs or earlier qualifications that enable them to get onto those courses is the first thing, I think. And then the second thing is, whatever we do in universities, we do operate a little bit in a bubble. And when students graduate and go into society, they then butt up against the same barriers and the same structural inequity and the same, oh, well, why would we recruit a woman for that role? And, we're not going to need a woman in that role. We need a man in that role. And there's a lot of work that as a society and as societies across the world, we still have to do to remove some of those structural barriers for women being able to go into unusual careers for women. They shouldn't be unusual at this point in time. Anybody should be able to do anything, but they still are. And that speaks to a structural inequity. And that's, I think, where our roles as I hate thinking of it this way, but as role models, it makes such a difference. And you spoke earlier about the economic impact of women being able to take a better part in society. But there's a real societal impact as well, because as more and more women enter the workforce, take on those senior roles, are embedded throughout society in leadership roles, then the more likely it is that those barriers will come down and we will get equity of opportunity. But at the moment, although there's plenty of opportunity for students to get onto courses, we're seeing the pipeline's not really there, so there's not always the demand, and then the barriers are in place for those that do it to actually get meaningful careers in those areas. So I think there's still a bit of a tension, and it has to be holistic. We've got to look at the
Mm.
entire ecosystem, not just the bit that we inhabit. So yeah, we've made huge progress, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, and I'll completely echo that. And I believe that at the secondary school level, it's so, so important. And here I like to mention another initiative, that the Future Learn schools that are part of the consortium of ICE. Those have free education that we're providing, digital access to education that's been providing to students at home. And that is essentially to overcome, all of the inequalities that we spoke about, all of the climatic factors that come into, all of the commute factors that come into, also not to forget the inflation that's been hit globally. Prices are skyrocketing, and the way the world dynamics, the economic workings are going around, we see even more prices go up, inflation go up, purchasing power would be going down. But then focusing on these skills, which Professor Sarah, that you were mentioning about, is so important, because until and unless at the secondary school level, at the incubation level, if we don't have these conversations around, let's say, using technology, using AI, having conversations on setting up your own micro enterprises, like we spoke about, so important. Ma'am Shahnaz, I'm going to ask you another question, and I think then we'll come around to this. Let's talk about there's a question in terms of reducing gender inequality in education systems, and this we have seen that parents play a very important role. Teachers play a very, very important role. Just like we have the student unions at the university level in the UK, in Pakistan, at the government level, at the local government level, we have the parent teacher councils, which have these conversations. And then we have a religious aspect as well, where the religious scholars tend to promote education. So, how important in your experience, Ma'am Shahnaz, because you've worked a lot with the donor partners, a lot with the local governments, with the government as well at the federal level, policy making, how important is that? And if we have a voice like Ma'am Baela was mentioning, women setting the policies, how conducive does that make the environment? You're muted, ma'am.
I do believe that women have a different perspective and they look at any situation in a different way. But having said that, and actually I'm in the training business, so one of the areas of training is also gender equality training. We do a lot of that, and we do that with men and women. And in my experience, I've also come across men who, if when they understand and if they have daughters, I believe they're also good advocates. But having said that, it is not necessarily true that you have the right people in the right place. Um, so you don't always have, in KP, we've seen girls' education. And Bela, I hope you'll bear me out, but we do see that KP has, in the last decade, you've seen huge changes in the KP. And why is that? Because the right people were, at the policy making level, and they took some, um, innovative decisions. So I do believe that it is the right person who should be there with the right information and an understanding. And I do believe I have come across women and men who have been in policy making places. And it is basically the understanding of how to make policy the knowledge of the subject. So if it is education, I would certainly never be in a policy level place. But yes, if it was skills training, or it was in entrepreneurship, then I think I would be able to provide a little input. So I think it is the right person with the right understanding of the subject who should be there. Bela, you've been an advisor, but perhaps in the Punjab, yeah, or for Punjab, or at the federal level. But anyway, a person like Bela could add so much value. But whether she'll be placed there, whether she'll have a voice there, is the important thing. I think it is extremely important to have the right person with the right skills and with the right voice, and understanding of what needs to be done, be it for men or be it for women. I also believe that education is no longer traditional, right? I mean, we all understand that it is not only about text or content, it is really about changing mindsets. And I'm sure that, all the higher education uh, platforms are thinking about that. But in Pakistan, I mean, my experiences in Pakistan, and I do believe that some universities are still not there. I think they are still focused on the curriculum, they're focused on the exams. Um, the professors, the teachers, they all need, there's so much that needs to be done. So I am not the right person. I think Bela would be the right person to respond to this. All I say is that I've seen men, I've seen women, but if they are the right people with the right understanding, I think either could do a good job, not
Wonderful. No,
necessarily
ma'am,
keeping
Shanaz, I think that was very well answered. And I think, Professor Sarah, a lot of room for us to think about ways in which we can work with universities, um, and education providers and higher education providers, colleges even in Pakistan, to train them, with regards to entrepreneurship, with regards to incubation, because we see the university do phenomenally well for encouraging, and supporting and getting these inspirational entrepreneurs that have
Uh,
studied from the
Noor,
university.
if I may,
G.
that there has been a lot of interest, and a lot of universities have started, you know, uh, talking about, for example, the business incubation
Yeah,
centers and startups. But I think it is more like, oh, this is a trend, so let's
so
get
let's
on
hop
to the
on.
get on board. But I think the correct way of doing it, there were some efforts when the business incubation centers were established in all the
Yeah,
universities. There was some effort to bring some consistency and quality, but it completely fizzled out,
yeah,
and it has not taken any shape. I think that is a big space that one needs to think about, because no matter what they study, at the end of the day, it is the pathway. Where will they go at the end of the day? And not everybody will find jobs any longer.
yeah.
So it is about what you can do with what you have learned. And I think that it is the age of the entrepreneurship. When I started back in early or late 80s, that nobody was even willing to, kind of, even the word entrepreneurship was foreign. It was like, oh, what is that? But now I think after 30 years or 35 years, I think it is the age of the entrepreneurship now. And I think a lot needs to be done, particularly at the higher education level.
Absolutely,
Micro
absolutely. And
enterprise, we still see it, but yeah.
I completely agree with you. And having voiced that, I think, again, what is important is, and since we're here talking about ICE as well, is just that skill set, just that out of school skill set that we need to inculcate and make it a part of the curriculum. There is one question here as well, with in terms of, how important is curriculum design when we're talking about gender stereotype. And like Professor Sarah also mentioned, that it has to be about not too much rigid of a teaching methodology. We should allow for spaces where creativity should flow. We should allow for people with different mental capacities as well. And if somebody's coming in with special education needs, they need to also be accommodated and become a part of that ecosystem, where what you are saying, Ma'am Shanaz, the enterprise inclusion should take place. It's really about that idea. It's really about that grit, and then learning how to do the business is important. What I was alluding to too is that perhaps what we need to sit together as a consortium is, because the world is moving increasingly towards transnational education, we need to figure out that how do we have a BNU representation in terms of the wealth of experience that Professor Sarah has back into countries like Pakistan, like Sri Lanka, like Nepal, like the Middle East, even I'd say, like Bangladesh, where such conversations need to pick up. Because if we are seeing a growth spurge of young people between the ages 15 to 30, and they are the huge chunk of our economy, they are the ones who are going to be the future leaders, right? So we need to do something right at the grassroots level. I'm going around to my last question to you, Ma'am Bella. I know we have run over time, but I've taken the liberty to extend the session by 30 more minutes. So please excuse me, ladies. But this has been so constructive that I want 10 more minutes from each one of you. Ma'am Bella, we spoke about returning to work. I remember when I was getting married, the question that I was asked in a multinational was, would you be carrying on working? And I said, is that even an option? And then the next question was, okay, so now you're pregnant, you are about to have a baby, would you be carrying on working? And I was like, oops, is that another question that we have? I had to build up a maternity policy for myself. I had to read up what the international, it is a UK, I'm very proud, it is a UK based company. They allowed me to develop a policy for Pakistan for maternity. It did impact me, but then it impacted all the five, six, seven, eight colleagues that followed through after me and had their babies. So this returning to work, and this essentially, I would say, creating also spaces where it's an additional impact, it's a financial impact on organizations as well. um, that how important is that returning to work where we're creating that enabling environment? And also I want to ask you about teacher training, because at ICE we advocate this so much that we have to speak about teacher training as well. We have to get the teachers who are going to be the torchbearers in primary secondary schools to learn how to do their work well. So I want you to focus on these two, and then I'll come around to Sarah and Shahnaz and take their viewpoints on this.
So I think both aspects. I think um, as part of our growth and lifelong milestones, this is all very not natural that we will be of childbearing age, we will have children, we will have concurrent ways of coping with all these milestones in our lives, and it's so important. It is what makes who we are and gives substance to us. We begin to understand the issue of balance in our lives in a very imbalanced way, a balance in our lives, and it is so vital. So I think so much has changed over the past decades, and how we look at these possibilities of education, of marriage, of children, of taking time out, being able to. For me, it was always clear in my head that I would do everything concurrently, and I did. And I created that space myself. It meant sometimes stretching my day as well. But more and more in my own organization, as young women had their children, we created that possibility. But we are seeing it even in the government and private sector, that there is more openness to this. And it now seems like a routine that we'll have young women who and men who will have children, and we, like us, we give paternity leaves, etc. So it's very important for children not to have a bond just with the mother but also with the father, and to have that time, etc. So I think those adjustments are coming along. So there is what is there in written policies, and there is what is in actual practice. And there might be, and there are gaps. Some people, I mean, I'm saying, why are you not taking your 3 month maternity leave? And she's saying, oh, ma'am, I can't bear it. I need to be back, after 2 months. And I said, but that's the time with your babies. I have my research department head who's brought up her two children when they were babies because she refused to stay home after the first 20, 30 days, and she would insist on bringing the baby, feeding the baby, being every, and both of those kids have grown up together. So it's a kind of space that you create, in homes. As far as teacher training concerned, there has to be a total paradigm shift. And because, like, we are just, you were talking about, bringing up families, etc., you are not now doing things in silos. Even in your family, you're co-creating things, you're negotiating things, you're being able to see things in a much more different light. It's not like all the burden is with you, you're sharing burdens. Teachers, they're still behind on that. We know that we are at a point in time in our knowledge systems and the ecosystems of that where kids, our students, are going ahead of teachers. Teachers tend to dumb down things, at one level, because they have to be so far ahead. Kids are, since the digital possibilities of self growth, they are doing things that shock you. I saw a kid the other day from grade 6 and 7, and she said, "Ma'am, can I do machine learning?" And I said, "What do you know about that?" And she said, "I've got 2 courses already." She showed me her 2 courses she'd done. She's learning languages on her own. The school is not doing it, but she's doing it. She's ahead of her teachers. So teachers also need to come out of their isolation and need to look at possibilities of their continuous professional development in a very different light. And so they are not the repositories of ultimate knowledge. Everything's so available. Look at AI now. So when you put all of these new elements which have emerged in these contemporary times, the paradigm, and sadly I must say that there are some exciting pieces of work taking place, say, in University of Arizona. I've seen taking place in Pakistan. I've seen taking place in the schools 2030 challenges, etc. There were exciting experiments going on, but the paradigm of teacher training has to change. It's still stuck. And whilst we are, since I'm also a champion of the Learning Generation Initiative, we've been looking at a completely different ways of workforce preparation and workforce upgradation all the time. But it means, when it's easy to talk about working with teams and why working in teams is so important, why co-creation is so important, why ensuring that these very transversal ways of preparing yourself in transversal skills as well as the other academic skills, etc., is so critical, why those enablers are so important. But we haven't quite, in spite of all so many commissions on teacher education, we're still not quite there.
Mm.
Because in a way it breaks that isolation of teachers, which is great news. But on the other hand, we are looking at more recognition of teachers' efforts and ways of where the top down planning is being able to create more space for the middle tier and for the teachers, so that their initiatives and innovations can be recognized. I myself have been very pleased. Just recently, I was invited by 3 different universities in their business and innovation incubators, etc., in Pakistan also recently. That I'm glad to see that there's a bit of there's still those incubators are important. And as Shahnaz said, that's where a lot of life happens. But the question is how well we can generate resources to keep those incubators and of innovations going,
Yeah.
and to be able to do that. So we are seeing lots of paradigms changing together, and I'm really happy to see that your space at home, your space at work, and your space of self growth, are becoming fused. It's not a bad idea. I think this business of thinking always in binaries is very Western. Sorry to say, Sarah, but when we are constantly thinking in very non-binary ways, it's not my personal life and then social life. I think there are great overlaps, and they're very rich overlaps, that we must take cognition of. It's this division of life in personal and social and work, etc., which sometimes undermine our own learnings. And therefore, I mean, if you look at women, all of us, by the way, I think we women are the perfect story of science. Our lives begin with science from day one. And from everything that you say, oh, this is only housekeeping, housekeeping is nothing but science. But reproduction is nothing but science. Sorting out nutrition is nothing but science. And then our places of work. So I think we are the greatest scientists going. Women are not giving enough credit to themselves. My God, we are like super jinns, of nature. I mean, I tell you, we are the magicians of nature. And I think let's hold ourselves up that way, and to see how we can redefine and revisit some of those paradigms, which I think in this so called Western way of looking at things. And for us, it's a second, we are two layered oppress. One is the Western notion, which has sort of equals modernity. And then there's the colonialization or the colonized mind, which continues to keep putting ourselves down way below. And I think we therefore have suffered from a double whammy. And I feel that the time has come for the ultimate liberation of coming up with our own rules as humans and what works for us. Because for us, each one of us here, all four of us, imagine the amount of packed lived experiences we have. Phenomenal, phenomenal. you know I am born in 1956, but I know 1847 as well, because I had great grandparents who had done 1847. So, it's great, that sense of history, that sense of culture, that sense of skilling, that sense of, being still beautiful, aesthetics, music. We are the ultimate performatory professionals.
I love it. I wish that, like Zoom, we had like a heart reaction that we could give. But very quickly, thank you so much, ma'am Bella. Very quickly, I know Sarah and Shahnaz, they want to comment on this, because this is also again returning to work and then teacher training. Let's speak about that. So
No,
over to
it's okay. I'll pass. I think Sarah might. It's okay.
you. Okay, all right, wonderful, Sarah.
I will just be really, really quick because actually, Bella's absolutely right. We have this Western notion of work-life balance, and you've got to, your life is somehow different from your work, and that's never been my way of thinking. I can't think that way. Like you, Bella, everything is just in my mind at the same time. I'm everything's
Absolutely.
being juggled. So it's very difficult to say work-life balance, because my work is my life. My life is also part of my work,
I love it.
and we do need to recognize that. My experience with maternity was, my then employer coming around to my house with profit and loss sheets for me when my baby was 10 years old, 10 years, not 10 days old, to say, okay, we need you just to go through this. I thought they were bringing cards and gifts. Here's the profit and loss. Go on and do that. So we do all of those things. We juggle it all, and that's, I wouldn't want to. I'm not sure I would know how to be any different, and I'm sure neither of my colleagues on the call would know how to be any different, nor I don't think you would either.
Not at all. Not at all. And I think that's like a generic thing, but it's good that I've seen Usman mentioned here as well, and I'm going to pull his comment up, because this is important, right? CEOs who are men, who are running organizations that have women that are 50% or more as part of their workforce, they need to actually step up and have these conversations, right? um, uh,
Yeah.
with what all that we're speaking about, right?
Yeah,
Not having a
absolutely.
maternity policy and having an inclusive maternity policies. And how we need to look at it is that that first starting bit is difficult. So I remember, Sarah, I read through 500 pages of the British maternity policy because I had to develop one for Pakistan, right? And I just, Bela, like you were saying, like your colleagues, I was back. I did not avail my full 3 months maternity leave, and I was back in the 2 months time because I wanted to get out and get to my workplace with my baby and just have that, comfortable moment. But exactly, when when we're juggling too many things, I think it doesn't have to do with work life balance, but I think one of the precious gifts that we have taken out of COVID, as bad as that time was, that we have normalized work from home for a lot of us. And
Mm.
the first person to do that is Shahnaz right here, because, like I said, that she introduced that concept starting from a desk at her dining table when she quit her job and started working on her own enterprise. And I could see that she could make it work. And I think that's the kind of observational mentoring that I have learned from her. The other thing that we spoke about with regards to teacher training, also so important, is all that we've spoken about as people who are involved in the academics and also in the teaching side. Training is teaching, yes, but it's more facilitation. um, what we also see is that there needs to be, like we're saying, a bottom up approach. I don't think the government and the policymakers can do everything with regards to everything that is happening in their own respective countries, whether that's UK, whether that's Pakistan. There also has to be a bottom up approach where school leaders, private school owners, public sector school owners, the head teachers at secondary schools in the UK, they come together and they say, let's speak about teacher training. I think in the UK, we have a phenomenal amount of teacher training that's been going on for the last many, many decades. Now it's a legal requirement. I think for Pakistan as well, we need to do the same. Ladies, thank you so much. I know we're very close to the iftar time in Pakistan as well. So appreciate both Bella and Shiraz for taking our time. We're still far from our iftar. We're still at the 1 p.m. But this has been a phenomenal webinar. Thank you so much to
Thank you.
ICE Pakistan
It
for
was a
getting.
pleasure.
Yes, final 30 seconds comments if anybody has to share. Bella, you can go first.
No, it's just, I think these kind of conversations are so empowering and affirmative. We should have more of these and across cultures. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you very much. It was
Thank you
great
so much.
to hear Sarah and you and Shanaz.
Shanaz, I'll come around to you.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Bela, to Sarah, Noor, to you. And I was also reading all the comments simultaneously. I think I really enjoyed myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Sarah, finally coming around to you.
Thank you. It's been fantastic. It's great to hear everybody's experiences and to realise how much we have in common, even though we might have different contexts and different backgrounds. There's a lot of commonality there. And I think the final thing is, just imagine what women could achieve if we had wives at home looking after us.
Thank you so much, ladies. I think this is a fantastic Women's Day celebration that we've had on behalf of IC Pakistan.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much, ladies, for joining us. A
Thank
big
you for
heart
having us.
to all three of
Goodbye.
you, and I'll
Thank
see you guys.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bella. Bye, Sarah.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Noor.